What's going on, community? Want to touch base on a little bit of some PulseX price predictions. I'm out here rolling around the hills in Austin, just hanging out, and seems like there's a little bit of a disconnect between the people who are really bullish on PulseX's price action and some of those are a little disappointed. So I think where some of the disappointment comes from is people were really excited about the yield, the one-sided staking pools, and that makes sense coming from our community, right? You know, we really enjoy delegation. We're looking at getting Pulse back in transaction fees. Naturally, we're all hexagons, so we like that yield from something that's immutable. But with PulseX, we don't really see it, and I think that's because the buyback is a little difficult to understand, and it's a mechanic that is typically not as valuable as it will be in this protocol and in this tokenomics here. And I can try to touch on why. So usually where you see a buy and burn is like Ethereum and Cake. That's two common projects where we see this. In those two scenarios, it's used to control inflation. In PulseX, it's very different because this token doesn't get minted. So that buy and burn is just pure buy pressure and actual deflation on the overall supply. So if you look at Cake over like a log scale and look at the supply, it sit here and it rounds the top, right? And that's because of that burning mechanic, but it's still inflationary. PulseX won't do that. That's very, very different. That is a very strong price action mechanic. Now this is a little bit inflammatory, but I like the methodology and I think it's a really neat idea. No human ever has to buy PulseX and the price still goes up. That's insanity, guys. There's obviously the DAO voting rights. That's probably a little tough for a lot of people to wrap their hand around, but you can just see that you have this constant buy and burn function, and it's not just a burn either. People just say that, okay, it's taking out a supply. It is actually buying on market. That it is a buy and burn. It's even stronger than what we see in the mechanics on the Pulse token itself, where it burns out of transactions, but it's not being purchased, right? In PulseX, there's no more supply. This is not curbing inflation. This is actually buying the token on market, and this buy and burn doesn't care if the token is 1 penny, 10 cents, $1, $10. It just purchases. It's a mechanic of the protocol. It buys out of that liquidity pool and then sends to that burn address. So it is buying and deflating in something that has no inflation. It's very different price action. It's a much more bullish feature to the tokenomics overall. So I just think people should really wrap their head around how neat this can be and how powerful even the DAO voting could be when it comes to in the future, when it comes to actually deciding what pools are valuable, how to incentivize there to be less liquidity in a particular pair, how to incentivize there to be more liquidity in a pair. And you can do a lot to encourage behaviors and the adoption from the Ethereum chain. So I would just encourage people to take some time, do some math, see what that buy and burn looks like at anywhere close to the volume that you see in similar protocols like Sushi and Pancake and Uni. And the other side too, those, at least when it comes to Uniswap and SushiSwap, people are doing things to scale around Ethereum's fees. So in the community here, we're using Change Now and Dharma as a ways to get around Ethereum fees. People are exchanging on centralized exchanges as a way to get around fees. So when you talk about PulseX, all this liquidity is going to be moved inside of the protocol, and there's going to be much less of a need to try to scale and route around fees because of how cheap it will be to transact on PulseChain. So even the idea of capturing the volume that we see in long time, very established protocols, it's not as hard as we think to capture that kind of a transaction volume when you look at the amount of people who are either doing less transactions or doing different things to scale around it. So just take some time, sit with the numbers. PulseX's token mechanics and that buy and burn are very, very powerful stuff. So play around with it. The price could get out of hand. It is something I'm very bullish on. We could see big movement in the future. So guys, take some time with it. It's not as simple as it sounds. It's a really neat token. Thanks, guys.